Well guys, I finally did it. I was finally able to walk through the Halloween Horror Nights Orlando haunted houses during the daytime. And I have a lot of thoughts on them, so let's dive right into them, shall we? What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to SoCal Exploring. My name is Scott, and you're watching your stop for all things theme park and attraction related. If you guys are new here, make sure you subscribe with those bell notifications on. Check us out on all of our social media pages, Instagram at SoCal Exploring Media and Twitter at SoCal Exploring. And if you want to purchase some official SoCal Exploring merchandise, we have our podcast merchandise, Horror Nights Unscripted on there, different SoCal Exploring designs, all of that and more by clicking the TeePublic link down below in the description. You can snag yourself a sticker, a shirt, a magnet, whatever you'd like. It's all on that TeePublic store, linked down below in the description. But let's get into why everybody is really here, and that is my review on both Revenge of the Tooth Fairy and Universal Monsters The Bride of Frankenstein Lives. So I was able to actually walk through them a couple days ago, as you guys may have seen on my recent vlog. And if you guys didn't watch that vlog, I'll leave a link down below in the description for you guys to check it out to get my initial thoughts, because my opinions changed between the first day walking through them and the second day walking through them. Now I want to cover three main topics, alright? The safetiness of the houses, because as we know there's a pandemic going on, the different details in the houses, and finally which one was better overall. And if you guys have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, Universal Orlando actually opened up 2 haunted houses this year, and those are the houses I talked about already, for daytime operations for like basically the complete month of October. So let's first start off with the safetiness and the cleanliness part of it. Was it safe to go through a Halloween Horror Nights experience during a pandemic? Well, first, right off the bat, I'm gonna say yes. And I'll explain that a little bit more right now. Now, not gonna lie, I was kind of skeptical about it because, you know, if you've been to Halloween Horror Nights before, you know that all the mazes / houses, there's always these things called conga lines, and that's essentially when everybody's really close together in the different scenes and just really up against each other. And obviously with social distancing going on, that's not very good at all. However, all throughout the house, they were splitting up groups individually. So they'd only send your group in, and then they wait about like 15 seconds or to whenever the group would get farther enough ahead where you could keep that socially distanced 6 feet away. And I'd say it was probably about 12 feet that they'd wait to try to keep the group spread out in between before sending them into the actual entrance of the house. Inside the actual house experience, there are staff members in there holding these little like light up like sticks, but they're not light up sticks, they're just turned off, but they are like light up sticks just turned off. If you're still gonna try to make it out to these houses in Universal Studios Florida, then I highly recommend that you look out for those sticks, because sometimes it is kind of hard to see them. But if you're getting too close to the group in front of you, or the group's just walking a little bit too slow in front of you, the team member will then put their glowing stick down, and then wait for that group to get far enough ahead for it to be safe for you to walk through the experience. And that's both the Revenge of the Tooth Fairy and Universal Monsters. Now, one thing I'll say is these houses, both of them without plexiglass, it'd be insane the level of like scare factor there would be. But nonetheless, walking through these different houses, I was so impressed with how scared I got in these houses with plexiglass. Now, most, if not all, the scares in the houses were behind plexiglass or like sheets of plastic. And even though you couldn't be, you know, in the face of the scare actors couldn't be in the face of you, they were still very, very well executed scares. And honestly, like I said, I still got plenty of scares. I still got tons and tons of scares, and I found myself a lot of the times missing the scares I had missed before walking through the previous walkthroughs that I did, which made the experience all the more scary and all the more fun. And all of these scare actors, while performing their different roles, were wearing face masks, as well as the team members directing guests inside of the actual houses. So I was really impressed with that. Universal Orlando did a good job at, you know, making the face mask to where it could kind of fit the outfit. And this mainly implies to the bride house, because it was mainly her who just had makeup on instead of like an actual latex mask. So yeah, Universal Orlando did a really good job at still kind of, throwing blood on the mask or other stuff like that to kind of fit the costume and not take away from the storytelling aspect of it. Overall, for safetiness though, I think that I felt extremely safe. There's not one time where there was somebody jumping on my back, or there's a time where we're super close to the group in front of us. Then again, I only went through each house 6 times, so a total of 12 walkthroughs. I don't know if it's different, if you've gone through multiple times, like more than that. But from my experience, I felt safe the whole entire time. Now, as far as the level of detail goes, Revenge of the Tooth Fairy versus Universal Monsters The Bride, we'll first start off with Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. The facade was absolutely beautiful. Like, I love every part of the facade, and one of the coolest things that I like about this house in specific is the narration playing the whole entire time, telling the story of James and how he doesn't want to give up his tooth to the Tooth Fairy, so the Tooth Fairy kills his family and turns him into a monster for him to be a monster with them. And I think that's one of the coolest things that I liked about this house in specific, is it kind of felt like you're actually walking through a demented Dr. Seuss story. I really like that, and I still have the narrations in my head of James didn't want to give up his tooth, and then the James audio cue playing, "No, it's my tooth." I love that so much. The scares in there were absolutely phenomenal, especially the last scene in specific when you're going through the bathroom / the laundry room. I really love that last scene. There's multiple scares coming out from different sheets, and it's just truly super immersive and feels like a full-on Halloween Horror Nights experience. The different scenes in there were all decked up and very nice and fit the story very well of, transferring from room to room to room of the different family members that were getting killed because James didn't want to give up his tooth. Which, like, come on, James, really? You're gonna keep your tooth and let all of your family members, literally even the grandma and grandpa, die because you don't want to give up your tooth? Ah, how rude of James. All the masks and everything looks super cool. I do wish, however, that some of the tooth fairies that we saw were a little bit different aside from just their hair. I wish that their masks were a little bit different. That's just one of my personal preferences. But for the most part, the masks were absolutely terrifying, and that made the scare deliver even more. And I just want to give a huge props to the full, almost full female cast, because you guys killed it. Every single walkthrough, you guys killed it. There was not one bad walkthrough that I had going through Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. So props to everybody that's a scare actor in that house. You guys rocked. And I love how dark and creepy it is, and just, all Halloween Horror Nights houses / maze experiences are dark and creepy, but some more than others, and I feel like with Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, that was the case. Now, moving into Universal Monsters The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, I was able to follow this story a lot better the first time walking through. Because guys, you gotta remember, I didn't research any of this stuff beforehand. I didn't watch any walkthroughs or anything like that. I wanted to keep it completely 100% spoiler free for myself, because that's one thing that I never do, and I wanted to do it for these two houses in specific. So this house tells the story of the Bride of Frankenstein trying to bring Frankenstein back to life, and you could really tell the story between the whole, throughout the whole house. First, you start off with the facade of her trying to lift up this big old long wood plank off Frankenstein, and then she drops it on him because she's not strong enough to lift it up. And then you go into another scene where it's she's kind of putting him back together or doing surgery on him. You go through multiple other scenes of him on the table that we see in the tribute store. And then of course Dracula's Bride's come into play, where we see her taking the blood out of Dracula's bride and putting it in to Frankenstein, which personally, this was my favorite scene out of the whole entire house. I loved it. I don't know why I loved it so much. Every time I went through the house, I was like, wow, that is my favorite scene. And in here, there were just tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of scare actors. Every single corner. I remember the first time we walked through it, there's a coffin scene in there where I was literally checking my guard to make sure that all of the figures inside those coffins were just props and not scare actors, and I thought that they were all props, but that wasn't the case. There was one on my left that scared the living hell out of me, so I love that. The way that they hid the scares in there were phenomenal. This is another one of those things where I say these houses without the plexiglass would rock 10 times better. However, with the plexiglass, I'm just so impressed on how amazing of a job they did even with it. But yeah, one thing I will say is it's a lot easier to tell the storyline if you didn't do any research or you didn't read anything at all for The Bride compared to Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. Then again, Tooth Fairy is not that hard to like pick up on. It's some rotten, spoiled kid that doesn't want to give up his tooth, so the Tooth Fairy comes and kills all his family. Now, all the scenes with the plexiglass weren't ruined at all, except for one, in my personal opinion, at the very end, when the bride is actually bringing Frankenstein back to life. Before we actually see Frankenstein as a scare actor, there's a big sheet of plexiglass all over it. It's a really big scene, and it was kind of killed by the plexiglass / the plexi sheet, I think it was. I don't know. It was kind of killed for me. That was the only complaint that I had about the plexiglass / the plexi sheets. And I know they're literally just sheets of plastic. I'm just referring them to plexi sheets. You only see Frankenstein as a scare actor about 2 to 3 times. You see him a lot during the entire house, but you only see him as a scare actor about 2 to 3 times to the end. So I wish that we would have seen him a little bit more as a scare actor. However, I understand the story is more about the bride rather than Frankenstein. That was more last year's house in Universal Monsters. And yes, the facade for this one was absolutely gorgeous too. And that first opening scene of her lifting up that big old plank, it brought it all together. It reminded me, I never walked through Scary Tales, but it reminded me a lot like that watching the walkthrough online from Scary Tales. But now into our last topic. Which one is better and why? Well, if you guys watched the vlogs from my recent Universal Orlando trip, in the first video I said that Universal Monsters was better. In the second one, however, I was like, I think I'm liking Tooth Fairy a little bit more. And after a total of 12 walkthroughs, 6 for each house, I can honestly say that Revenge of the Tooth Fairy was my personal favorite out of the 2 haunted houses that Universal Orlando Resort debuted this year. And why, you may ask? Well, I think it goes back to that one reasoning of the demented Dr. Seuss. Like, I just love the narration the whole entire time. Like, you hear the guy talking the whole entire time throughout the house. I think that brought it all together for me, and I'm a sucker for originals. I do love my IPs, but I'm a sucker for originals, especially now that I finally got to check out an Orlando original house. I'm a sucker for originals, and just the cast in there was killing it every single walkthrough. Now, I'm not saying that the bride cast wasn't killing it every single walkthrough, because all the scare actors were absolutely amazing, so huge props to you guys, especially doing it during a pandemic. But honestly, the Tooth Fairy cast, is something about them, they really killed it, and they really showed how much they wanted to execute their scares perfectly every single time. And for that reason, I like Revenge of the Tooth Fairy over Universal Monsters The Bride. But don't get me wrong, like I said, it was a close call. They're neck and neck. They're still both 5 out of 5 houses for me. Ooh, and that is the long video. I'm sorry, well, it may not even be long. It says 18 minutes on the camera, but it may be scaled down to like 14 minutes. But it's longer than usual for a review. I hope you guys enjoyed my kind of in-depth review and my thoughts on it. And I want to know what your guys' reasoning for picking a certain house as your favorite down below. Did you like The Bride better? Did you like Revenge of the Tooth Fairy better? And let me know why down below in the comment section. My name is Scott. You've been watching SoCal Exploring. Positivity is key. And most importantly, remember to keep exploring. Peace out, everybody.